Up until now, I have been identified as Jane A.O. Doe. On this day, I've decided to fully relinquish my anonymity as a symbol to myself that there's absolutely nothing I have to be ashamed or afraid of. You see, I am currently in the process of completing my master's degree in occupational therapy. And throughout the past year, I have feared that if I allowed myself to be identified publicly, there would be severe consequences for me within the medical and professional spectrum. This is but one of the many dilemmas that I have faced at the hands of Larry Nassar. Due to the bravery and courage of the many women who appeared in Ingham County to face our predator, I am no longer fearful. To all of them, I will be ever grateful. As I sat down to write my impact statement, I found myself struggling to find what it is I actually want to say to the defendant, besides the obvious. A million thoughts and emotions flooded my brain, racing around as I attempted to hone in on my target. It's a nearly impossible task to simply put words onto a piece of paper that accurately and completely describe everything that I feel and have felt since the very day that my path unfortunately crossed Mr. Nassar's. So I'll start with the basics. Mine is a similar narrative to many of the survivors. I was a competitive gymnast, and I started at a very young age. At the age of around 12, 13, I began having severe low back pain. Additionally, I had endured a fall unrelated to the sport that had left me with unbearable tailbone pain. In turn, I was referred to Mr. Nassar by my coaches at the age of 14. I knew who Larry was. We all did. He was the physician to the Olympians, the healer of gymnasts. Many of my teammates were either patients of his at the time or had been in the past. And it had been made very clear to me and to my mother how lucky I was to have the opportunity to be seen by him. I felt so privileged, so special, just knowing that I, of all people, get to have Larry Nassar as my physician. I will not discuss the details of what occurred during my appointments in East Lansing, as I'm sure everyone can take an educated guess by now. I will say this: it takes a monster to sexually assault a child, but it takes a monster backed by ego, experience, and power fueled by multiple institutions to sexually assault a child in front of their own mother. It was uncomfortable and terrifying, but who was I to question the treatment that was supposed to heal me? Something about it felt off, though at the time I wouldn't have imagined that he was touching me for his own gratification. Shortly after my last appointment, I chose to leave the sport I loved. Somewhere between meeting him and leaving gymnastics, I began to experience overwhelming anxiety and depression. This only grew worse after I separated myself from the world of gymnastics. I had completely lost my identity. I was struggling to process and understand why I was feeling the way that I was. And I would be lying if I said I had never seriously contemplated taking my own life at that time. Fast forward to February of 2017. All the while, struggling with crippling anxiety and the panic attacks that come along with it. A preview for the 10 o'clock news appears across my television screen with a picture of Larry's face. The only words I heard from that preview were sexual assault allegations. Immediately I knew. I knew that what I had felt all those years ago was real. That he wasn't treating me for the back and tailbone pain that I suffer with to this day. But instead, he was running on his own sick and twisted agenda. This past year has been absolutely horrible. I still struggle with depression and anxiety. As a result, I have secluded myself from family and friends. I'm leery around male physicians and other healthcare providers. And I fear that somehow I too will unknowingly put my 2-year-old daughter into harm's way, just as my mother and many other mothers did. Anytime a male even so much as looks at her in a grocery store, I go in the opposite direction. Up until December, when I no longer had an option, I refused to place her in daycare. Because the opportunities for abuse are endless in that setting. Worst of all, I have had no choice but to compartmentalize all of it. Every feeling or thought I have had for a year, plus some, just to be able to make it through each and every passing day without completely losing it. All of the sadness, all of the fear, all of the anguish, all of the shame, and all of the anger. As a gift to myself, I'm leaving every last ounce of that here with you today. I'm taking back my life, the one you stole from me, my friends, and my family. Looking back on this day, I want my child to see that her mother had the courage to stand up for what was right and to face her abuser. I want my daughter, all of our daughters, and even your daughters, Larry, to see and know their worth.